Aleister Crowley was an English occultist, philosopher, ceremonial magician, poet, novelist and he founded the religion of Thelema, identifying himself as the prophet entrusted with guiding humanity into the Aeon of Horus in the early 20th century. A prolific writer, he published widely throughout his life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grimoire of Myths, the place where we dive deep into the mysteries that shape our world. Today, we're embarking on a journey into the enigmatic world of Aleister Crowley, a man whose life was as fascinating as the myths that surround him. So, buckle up, because we're about to unravel the mythos and explore the origins of the infamous Aleister Crowley. Born to a wealthy family in Royal Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, Crowley rejected his parents' fundamentalist Christian faith to pursue an interest in Western esotericism. He was educated at Trinity College at the University of Cambridge, where he focused his attention on mountaineering and poetry, resulting in several publications. In 1898, he joined the esoteric Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where he was trained in ceremonial magic by Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers and Alan Bennett. In 1904, he married Rose Edith Kelly, and they honeymooned in Cairo, Egypt, where Crowley claimed to have been contacted by a supernatural entity named Awis, who provided him with a book of the law. This sacred text served as the basis for Thelema. Announcing the start of the Aeon of Horus, the book declared that its followers should do what thou wilt and seek to align themselves with their true will through the practice of ceremonial magic. Crowley gained widespread notoriety during his lifetime, being an individualist social critic. Crowley has remained a highly influential figure in Western esotericism and the counterculture of the 1960s and continues to be considered a prophet in Thelema. He is the subject of various biographies and academic studies. His father, Edward Crowley, was trained as an engineer, but his share in a lucrative family brewing business, Crowley's Alton Ales, had allowed him to retire before his son was born. His mother, Emily Bertha Bishop, came from a Devonshire Somerset family and had a difficult relationship with her son. She described him as the Beast, a name that he reveled in. The couple had been married at London's Kensington Registry Office in November 1874 and were evangelical Christians. Crowley's father had been born a Quaker, Emily likewise converted upon marriage. Crowley's father was particularly devout, spending his time as a traveling preacher for the sect and reading a chapter from the Bible to his wife and son after breakfast every day. At the age of 8, Crowley was sent to H.T. Habersham's Evangelical Christian Boarding School in Hastings and then to Eber Preparatory School in Cambridge, run by the Reverend Henry Darcy Champney. In March 1887, when Crowley was 11, his father died of cancer. Inheriting a third of his father's wealth, he began misbehaving at school. Crowley's family removed him from the school when he developed kidney issues. He then attended Malvern College and Tunbridge School, both of which he despised and left after a few terms. He became increasingly skeptical regarding Christianity, pointing out inconsistencies in the Bible to his religious teachers, and went against the Christian morality of his upbringing by smoking and other things that can't be repeated on YouTube. Crowley's life at Cambridge. Having adopted the name of Aleister over Edward, in October 1895, Crowley began a 3-year course at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he entered the moral science tripos studying philosophy. With approval from his tutor, he changed to English literature, which was not then part of the curriculum offered. Crowley spent much of his time at university engaged in his pastimes, becoming president of the chess club and practicing the game for 2 hours a day. He briefly considered a professional career as a chess player. In August 1898, Crowley was in Zermatt, Switzerland, where he met the chemist Julian L. Baker, and the two began discussing their common interest in alchemy. Back in London, Baker introduced Crowley to George Cecil Jones, Baker's brother-in-law, and a fellow member of the occult society known as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which had been founded in 1888. Crowley was initiated into the Outer Order of the Golden Dawn on 18 November 1898 by the group's leader, Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. The ceremony took place in the Golden Dawn's Isis Urania temple, held at London's Mark Mason's Hall, where Crowley took the magical motto and name Frater per Jurabo, which he interpreted as I shall endure to the end. Crowley moved into his own luxury flat at 6769 Chancery Lane and soon invited a senior Golden Dawn member, Alan Bennett, to live with him as his magical tutor. Bennett taught Crowley more about ceremonial magic and the ritual use of and together they performed the rituals of the Gosha until Bennett left for South Asia to study Buddhism. In November 1899, Crowley purchased Boleskine House and foyers on the shore of Loch Ness in Scotland. He developed a love of Scottish culture, describing himself as the Laird of Boleskine, and took to wearing traditional Highland dress, even during visits to London. Crowley soon progressed through the lower grades of the Golden Dawn and was ready to enter the group's inner Second Order. He was unpopular in the group, his unconventional sexuality and liberal lifestyle had gained him a bad reputation, and he had developed feuds with some of the members, including W.B. Yeats. When the Golden Dawn's London Lodge refused to initiate Crowley into the Second Order, he visited Mathers in Paris, who personally admitted him into the Adeptus Minor grade. A schism had developed between Mathers and the London members of the Golden Dawn, who were unhappy with his autocratic rule. Acting under Mathers' orders, Crowley, with the help of his mistress and fellow initiate Elaine Simpson, attempted to seize the Vault of the Adepts, a temple space at 36 Blythe Road in West Kensington, from the London Lodge members. When the case was taken to court, the judge ruled in favor of the London Lodge, as they had paid for the space's rent, leaving both Crowley and Mathers isolated from the group. The Thelema in Crowley's life work. According to Crowley, he heard a disembodied voice claiming to be that of Awis, the messenger of Horus. Crowley said that he wrote down everything the voice told him over the next 3 days and titled it, The Book of the Law. The book proclaimed that humanity was entering a new eon and that Crowley would serve as its prophet. It stated that a supreme moral law was to be introduced in this eon, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, and that people should learn to live in tune with their will. This book, and the philosophy that it espoused, became the cornerstone of Crowley's religion, Thelema. Crowley said that at the time he had been unsure what to do with the Book of the Law. Often resenting it, he said that he ignored the instructions that the text commanded him to perform, which included taking the stele of revealing from the museum, fortifying his island, and translating the book into all the world's languages. According to his account, he instead sent typescripts of the work to several occultists he knew, putting the manuscript away and ignoring it. With his old mentor George Cecil Jones, Crowley continued performing the Abramelin rituals at the Ashdown Park Hotel in Colston, Surrey. Crowley claimed that in doing so he attained samadhi, or union with Godhead, thereby marking a turning point in his life. He also claimed to have been contacted once again by Awis in late October and November of 1907, adding that Awis dictated 2 further texts to him, Liber Vitae and Liber Cordis Incti Serpente, both of which were later classified in the corpus of the Holy Books of Thelema. Crowley wrote down more Thelemic holy books during the last 2 months of the year, including Liber LXVI, Liber Arcanorum, Liber Portolucis, Subfigura X, Liber Tau, Liber Tetragrammaton, and Liber Velaorita, which he again claimed to have received from a preternatural source. Crowley stated that in June 1909, when the manuscript of the Book of the Law was rediscovered at Boleskine, he developed the opinion that Thelema represented objective truth. Crowley's inheritance was running out. Trying to earn money, he was hired by George Montague Bennett, the Earl of Tankerville, to help protect him from witchcraft. Recognizing Bennett's paranoia as being based on his powdered sugar addiction, Crowley took him on holiday to France and Morocco to recuperate. In 1907, he also began taking and paying students, whom he instructed in occult and magical practice. Victor Newberg, whom Crowley met in February 1907, was his closest disciple. In 1908, the pair toured northern Spain before heading to Tangier, Morocco. Crowley's later life. In early 1912, Crowley published The Book of Lies, a work of mysticism that biographer Lauren Sutton described as his greatest success in merging his talents as poet, scholar, and magus. The German occultist Theodor Roos later accused him of publishing some of the secrets of his occult order, the Ordo Templi Orientis, within the book. Crowley convinced Roos that the similarities were coincidental, and the two became friends. Roos appointed Crowley as head of the OTO's British branch, the Mysteria Mystica Maxima, and at his ceremony in Berlin, Crowley adopted the magical name of Baphomet and was proclaimed ex degree Supreme Rex and Sovereign Grand Master General of Ireland, Iona, and all the Britons. With Roos's permission, Crowley set about rewriting many OTO rituals, which were then based largely on Freemasonry. His incorporation of Thelemite elements proved controversial in the group. Fascinated by the OTO's emphasis on sex magic, when the Second World War broke out, Crowley wrote to the Naval Intelligence Division offering his services, but they declined. He associated with a variety of figures in Britain's intelligence community at the time. As the Blitz hit London, Crowley relocated to Torquay, where he was briefly admitted to a hospital with asthma, and entertained himself with visits to the local chess club. Tiring of Torquay, he returned to London, where he was visited by American Thelemite Grady McMurtry, to whom Crowley awarded the title of Hymenaeus Alpha. He stipulated that though Germer would be his immediate successor, McMurtry should succeed Germer as head of the OTO after the latter's death. In April 1944, Crowley briefly moved to Aston Clinton in Buckinghamshire, where he was visited by the poet Nancy Cunard, before relocating to Hastings in Sussex, where he took up residence at the Netherwood boarding house. He took a young man named Kenneth Grant as his secretary, paying him in magical teaching rather than wages. He was also introduced to John Symonds, whom he appointed to be his literary executor. Symonds thought little of Crowley, later publishing negative biographies of him. Corresponding with the illusionist Arnold Crowther, it was through him that Crowley was introduced to Gerald Gardner, the future founder of Gardnerian Wicca. They became friends, with Crowley authorizing Gardner to revive Britain's ailing OTO. Another visitor was Eliza Marion Butler, who interviewed Crowley for her book The Myth of the Magus. Other friends and family also spent time with him, among them Doherty and Crowley's son Aleister Crowley. On 1 December 1947, Crowley died at Netherwood of chronic bronchitis aggravated by pleurisy and myocardial degeneration, aged 72. His funeral was held at a Brighton crematorium on 5 December, about a dozen people attended, and Lewis Wilkinson read excerpts from the Gnostic Mass, the Book of the Law, and Hymn to Pan. The funeral generated press controversy and was labeled a black mass by the tabloids. Crowley's body was cremated, his ashes were sent to Carl Germer in the US, who buried them in his garden in Hampton, New Jersey. Crowley's influence after death. The Thelema continued to develop and spread following Crowley's death. In 1969, the OTO was reactivated in California under the leadership of Grady Lewis McMurtry. In 1985, its right to the title was unsuccessfully challenged in court by a rival group, the Society Ordo Templi Orientis, led by Brazilian Thelemite Marcelo Ramos Mata. Another American Thelemite is the filmmaker Kenneth Anger, who had been influenced by Crowley's writings from a young age. In the United Kingdom, Kenneth Grant propagated a tradition known as Typhonian Thelema through his organization, the Typhonian OTO, later renamed the Typhonian Order. More widely, Crowley became a dominant figure in the modern pagan community. L. Ron Hubbard, the American founder of Scientology, was involved in Thelema in the early 1940s, with Jack Parsons, and it has been argued that Crowley's ideas influenced some of Hubbard's work. The scholars of religion Asbjørn Durendal, James R. Lewis, and Jesper Peterson noted that even though Crowley was not a Satanist, he in many ways embodies the pre-Satanist esoteric discourse on Satan and Satanism through his lifestyle and his philosophy, with his image, and becoming an important influence on the later development of religious Satanism. For instance, two prominent figures in religious Satanism, Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino, were influenced by Crowley's work. That wraps up our exploration of the mythos and origins of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley's mythos is a tapestry woven with threads of mystery, rebellion, and spiritual exploration. Whether you see him as a prophet or a provocateur, there's no denying his influence on the occult and beyond. What are your thoughts on the life and legacy of Aleister Crowley? Let's continue the conversation in the comments below. And that's all I have today. Until next time.